the most simple flies are the most effective flies. Take the woolly bugger for example, but this is probably even simpler. It's the Clouser Minnow, designed by Bob Clouser, who is a fly fishing guide for smallmouth bass. He designed this fly first for catching smallmouths, and then people took it around the world, literally catching any species on earth, including tarpon. This fly is a universal fly, and I'm going to tie Bob's original pattern. And my favorite is a chartreuse and yellow or a chartreuse and white. Either one works great. So let's go ahead and start with the Clouser Minnow. It'll be an easy one for you, but it'll be an effective one. One of the hardest things about this fly is getting good hair, good bucktail. And we're going to start first though with the key element to this fly, which is lead head eyes. And as you can see, these eyes here are painted. You can buy them this way, and you have some, of course, for those that have the material kit, have those already in your kit. So here we go. We're going to take and we're going to lay out a base of thread first. Now, what about a hook? There's a lot of different hooks. It depends on which style you're going to tie the fly. If you're going to tie it for saltwater, you're going to use a saltwater hook like this. If you're going to use a freshwater, you may change it around, or you may still have the steel hook. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take the lead eyes and first put them on the top of the hook. Now to do this, we just need to secure it. And I just put a wrap of thread basically right here between the eyes between my thumb and finger, and we wrapped one wrap. Now we got to allow some spacing here because what we're going to do, let me just show you right now. This is a completed one. And so what you want to do is that we're going to do it on top, and then we're going to flip it over. Right now, we want to allow enough room here to have a substantial head. So take the fly. If you have the kit that has the fly, you can kind of judge that by looking at the fly you already have. That looks pretty good right there. Now, this is the maneuver which we're going to use in a lot of flies. It's called an X pattern. See how I go between? I'm Xing the thread. Now, the thread I have is a heavy thread, a size A, and you want a substantial thread because you want to really be able to put the pedal to the metal, as they say, and put a lot of torque on it. Now, something that we're going to do, and a lot of people call this a 5-minute fly, and the reason it's a 5-minute fly is the epoxy. I'm going to use some 5-minute epoxy here. As you can see, I'm mixing up the 5-minute epoxy. So I have 5 minutes, of course, to let it set up. But what I'm going to do is basically use the 5-minute epoxy before it gets set up right here to put it inside where the lead is. That's going to really make this fly a lot more durable. One of the big problems with this fly, especially if you use it in salt water, we'll come back to the epoxy in a minute. One of the big problems is that it catches fish with got nasty teeth. Okay, now we're going to tip it upside down without getting too wrapped up in the epoxy. There you can see what we're doing. Now we'll wrap a few more wraps, and there's that epoxy is setting up. Now what we want to do is we take a look at our pattern here. As you can see, we're going to be tying some white bucktail, and also we're going to be tying, let's see if you can see this little sparkle in there. This is called Accent Mirage, which you have. This is the opal one. I really like that color. So the first thing we're going to do is tie that in. Now, how long should you make this? If you can see, this is approximately 2 times the shank length. Now, I'm going to use a little bit different color just to show you that you don't have to always use one color. We're going to add a little bit of the Accent Mirage in kind of an olive color. And we can just put it right there so it goes over the back right here. And we're going to tie it right in just like this. And we'll wrap through it, tie it again on the other side. See if you can see that. I tied it on the other side of the eyes. Now we have that going out the back. Now we're going to get some bucktail, and let me tell you, look how nice and straight that bucktail is. Getting good bucktail takes a little bit of search. Start your search at Cabela's, and you can stack it. Now this is when I use a bigger stacker. If you want it to be real nice, you can stack it out. And actually, all a stacker is a hair evener. Now, how much hair should you use? As you can see right here in this pattern, I've got way too much hair. So this is why we have flies for you to tie against. So what we're going to do is take out some of that. Now, one thing you might want to notice, some of this has a little bit more hollowness to it. We're going to tie some now. This is one of the big problems with that fly. I want you to see that. How straight that is. That's not very good. If you compare it to this other pattern, you can see the difference in the materials. See, one is a lot thinner, one's a lot thicker. So it's really important when you tie this that you get the right material. And you want to really look over your bucktails. Now, for example, I'm going to show you this bucktail right here. And you're going to find that up in here, this part of the bucktail is where you're going to get more of the thinner fiber. So we're going to go and get some other deer hair that's a little bit more up towards the front, and you're going to see the difference in it when we tie it in. Okay, it's a little thinner, and we're going to lean it so it goes right through the hook, just like that. We're going to trim it. It's much easier to tie down something that's trimmed than if it is not trimmed. Okay, we're going to tie it in right here, so keep it out of the eye. Let me just tilt that so you can see it. And then we're going to go around to the front and do the same thing. So we've got kind of a little gap over there. And that's going to go through the hook. Now, on the other side, we're going to flip it over. And this is, again, where your rotary vices are really valuable. Okay. Snapped in there. You'll find that you need to adjust your vise so it's open quite a ways to handle these bigger hooks. They're kind of tough on vices. All right. Now we're going to kind of clean this up. We've got a couple strands there. Now we're going to get some of the chartreuse. Oh, the chartreuse. I don't care where you fish, this is a great color right here, this chartreuse. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're kind of match it up so that it's even with the other hair. And we're going to tie it right in just like we did on the other one. Now this time you're really going to want to wrap tight and hard, making sure that that gets in. And then we tie it in from here. And now we have the basis of our Clouser Minnow. As you can see, it's not a particularly hard fly to tie. What could you do to make this fly a little better? I mean, that's always the question. Could I do some more things to make it a little better? Well, you could. You could add some peacock. You could add some different types of flashabou. There's a lot of different things that you can do to this fly. Different eyes. Weight, you don't really need to have much weight on it because most of the time these are fished with sinking lines, especially in the ocean. And they'll get, now this particular design is made so it bumps the bottom and the hook is up so you don't snag as many. But if you do, you don't have to cry so much because guess what? This fly is very, very easy to tie. Now, you may want to first do a whip finish or a half hitch before you do your whip finish. Now, one thing that you could do is change your thread. Now, I'm using white thread. You could use even a green thread, or you could paint this with a different colored cement. Okay, now what we're going to do is we'll do our whip finish, and then we'll add the epoxy, which should be just about ready to go. And that's going to make this fly a lot more durable. There we go. The Clouser Minnow is complete. And we go down and grab our epoxy. And we'll epoxy the head of that. We'll roll it over. Epoxy on top. Now, there's a 1-minute epoxy too, but you got to be fast. There's even a 15-minute epoxy, so you may want to even, if you're a slow tyer, you may want to look at the 15-minute epoxy. Now, what I'll do right now is I'll grab it. We'll take a look at our little Clouser Minnow, and we'll let it dry. You know, right here on my little Lazy Susan there. And we've got our Clouser Minnow. Really a 5-minute fly.